up, YouTube? You already know. Big Lou tapping back in. Ain't been around in a minute, but here I go. But what it do with Big Lou and FZR2, baby. Bye. So check it out. You could obviously you guys can see that thumbnail. This was a pretty big interaction interview. I usually call them interviews that went down a couple of days ago. I didn't even know that was planned going on. Nothing. I just happened to see James Proctor's video pop up in my feed. So obviously it interested me. I clicked it. Boom. His short video was pretty short, but nonetheless, if it put me on track to know that interview interaction went down, then he's got 30,000 subscribers. He does pretty well with views, 10,000, 8,000 plus views per video, I'd imagine. So the word got out there to a lot of different people. You know what I'm saying? And so if you guys don't know who that is in the thumbnail, that's Patrick Bet David from Value Entertainment, or PBD podcast. And you have obviously John Gotti, the father, in the middle, who people call Senior, and then you got John Gotti Jr. on the opposite side of Patrick Bet David. Now I'm going to say this, and I've said this many times before. John Gotti Jr. is not really a junior, right? His dad, who they call Senior, is really a junior. He was named after his dad. So, like he said in the video, and I've said this a few times before, all his siblings and family called him Junior, and good friends like Angelo Ruggiero and guys that known him all their life used to call him Junior, not Senior, or I think they even called him Johnny Boy. Some guys back in the day, guys that knew him out there, in the scheme of things, you know what I'm saying? And so John Gotti Jr. says in the interaction that I'm actually the third, my son's the fourth, but really, no, first he goes, I'm John A. Gotti. And that's where it ends and starts right there. There's no such thing as he's the third and his son's the fourth. Not at all. Because they got different middle names. So you can't, his father's middle name is Joseph. His middle name is Angelo. So there's no way that he's a third. You have to have the same exact name, right? Like my dad and my brother, they got the same first name, same last name, but they have two different middle names. So therefore, my brother is not a junior. Now, me and my son, we got the same first name, same middle name, same last name. I'm Senior, he's Junior. And then if he decides to name, if he ever has a boy and he names his boy after us, then the son will be Junior, as long as he got the same first, middle, and last name, right? So at the same time, John Gotti, the father, he has 3 or 4 grandsons named John. You got John Gotti, who they call Junior, his son. You got Peter Gotti's son, John. He's in prison right now. And then you got Victoria's, I think one of her sons is John. Carmine John, and I can't remember the third one, which they were in Growing Up Gotti, the TV show. Carmine John, and I can't remember the names. And so anyways, so that's where that goes. So I'm going to be all over the place with my points here, what I'm going to say real quick, because it was just a lot to keep mind of. This was a well over 3-hour interaction / interview, you know what I'm saying, where he touched on some great points that a lot of people have been wondering about. A lot of people have been making, speaking their own perspectives and point of views about, which including myself, right? So I'm just going to stop from the top, okay? His meeting in 1999 with his dad, where they videotaped it, right? Most people ain't gonna understand what's going on. I'm saying even some seasoned people, because if you don't know these guys personally, you can't really speak on what they're speaking about. I mean, you got an idea, but to really understand what they're saying, you can't. You might not be able to break the code, right? But for the most part, because knowing who his dad was and what he was about, we know what his perspective on the situation was, right? Okay, because even John Jr. admitted it in this interaction, and we'll get to that too. But so that went down, that meeting in 1999 in, I believe it was Springfield. I think he said it was. So that's Springfield, Missouri. I believe it's Springfield, Missouri. I don't think, because I heard him say Springfield, Mass. I think that hospital, that federal hospital prison, is in Springfield, Missouri. Okay. So anyways, his dad gets brought in. He's trying to tell his dad, he wants to give it up. He wants closure. And he says, my son Jojo told me, and he's speaking, when he says Jojo, he's talking about the guy who just passed away last week, Jojo Carrazzo, talking about his son, who's a well-known, great attorney in the New York area, right? And I guess Joseph Jr., Jojo, passed the word to John Sr. that, and I'm going to still say Sr. and Jr. because that's what everybody knows them by. I don't want to get people confused. So Sr. said that, hey, Jojo told me, he might have said Joseph, but I think he said Jojo. Jojo said John wants closure. But closure is not in my son's vocabulary, right? So he's telling you right there, that means that no. That's what that means. No. You know what I'm saying? The closure is not in his vocabulary because it ain't happening, Captain. That's what that means. Right? Okay, so, but John Gotti Jr., in this interaction, he explains his point of view, right? And I gotta admit, I gotta agree with the man on this, right? Yes, Dad, you were this. This is who you are. This is what you are about. This is everything. You're gonna keep going down that hallway until you get to the end of that door and walk through it. And whatever happens, happens. He goes, and John Jr. says this, that I don't agree with that because circumstances change, which they do. That life had got not only watered down how it's now, but the fact that, so many guys after Sammy pretty much decided to flip and give up the goods on almost everybody, right? Including a sitting boss, not to mention how many acting bosses. We had a couple under bosses, a couple of acting bosses, what I'm saying? A sitting boss who was pretty much the last official boss on the street, right, at that time, Joe Messino, because the Chin was locked up, so they had an acting. Uh, uh, the Gambinos had acting bosses at that time. Well, actually, John passed already. I think Peter was the boss at that time, so by that time he was the official boss, but he was in jail. Okay, you had Vic Musso been in jail, so there's always been a acting boss for them. So then the Colombo, same thing. So Persico had been busted since the 80s, right? 85, 86, whatever, in the commission case. So he already did over a decade on a charge, got out, got lost in trial for 39 years or something like that, 39 years. Then he lost again in the commission for 100 years. So he was doing 139 years. And there was always an acting boss in place. Okay, so Joe Messino was the last. That's why the book was named The Last Don. He was legitimately the last sitting actual boss of a Borgata. Okay, he ends up flipping. So, I mean, what does that tell you by that time? You know what I'm saying? Not to mention you had little Al Diarco, Joe DeFede. These guys were acting bosses. They flipped. Sammy the Bull, Phil Leonetti were under bosses. They flipped. Right? A ton of captains. I can't even go down the line with all the captains. So many of them. So many soldiers by that time. And it just continues to this day. When Starico got involved and introduced, I mean, it came out years ago, but by the time they started, implementing it and charges and going after guys, that's when it, really started happening. It came out in 1970, the RICO, and by 78 or 79 was when they finally used it on it was a biker, it was some type of biker deal. By the time they started using it against, the mob, the Italians, was in the 80s, sometime in the 80s, I believe. And then it just devastated them. And they've been devastating everybody else, every other organization since then with that RICO Act. And in my opinion, it's unconstitutional as garbage. You can break into people's houses. This is law enforcement, breaking into people's houses, breaking into people's cars, breaking into people's businesses, and planting bugs and listening devices. I think that's bogus as hell. Not to mention you bypass somebody's dogs by giving them something to eat. It's unethical in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion, it's unethical. And then who's to say that they're not listening to everybody's they're supposed to listen, and if they don't hear nothing about organized crime or whatever it is that they're investigating, they're supposed to shut off the recorder. But who's to say they do that and follow the rules? I mean, how many times have we seen FBI agents, cops, detectives, even the district attorneys, U.S. ADAs, all these people, judges doing wacko shit, right? Even in this, what I'm going to say regarding this video with John Jr., he uncovered so much corruption and unethical situations that all those different entities I just said that were involved with, you know what I'm saying? But yet they still kept coming at him. They still kept, so that's a little bit on that. His view on the WITSEC, because he's supposed to have a project about the WITSEC. He says that these guys are, they're held without bail. They're it's set in court by by the U.S. ADAs or the district attorneys if it's a state case, that how dangerous these guys are. You know what I'm saying? And then once these guys, they're so dangerous that no, Your Honor, no, we're against them having bail. We want them to stay in jail while they fight this case. To once this individual decides to flip, then it's okay to afterwards to release them. Place them somewhere else with a new identity, with a new name, new driver license, new social security number, new everything, new bank account, new car, new place to live, like I said, and that's just fine. You're putting him anywhere in the United States, and nobody knows who he really is or what he's really done. But now he's not dangerous because he gave up guys that you guys wanted so bad. That's a trip, right? He also spoke about all Sammy the Bull's BS, all his lies. When he says that he infiltrated some jurors and he paid them off. That's just one juror, and this is something I've always thought. Like, that's only one juror out of 12. What about the other 11? You can't go in there and say, well, Your Honor, us 11 said guilty. This one says not guilty, and that's called a hung jury. John Sr. never got a hung jury on those cases, right? So, I mean, what is it with that then? What, they just got tired of the deliberations, so they finally all 11 just said no, not guilty with the guy? I don't get that part. That part don't make sense to me, which he brought that out. You know what I'm saying? He talks about Sammy, how we know he's a green-eyed little goblin. All he sees is money, how he's treacherous when it comes to his friends, and how he admitted in court that he only pulled the trigger once, but now he's trying to bubble off 19 murders, T-shirts, and all this other stuff, right? It's despicable. I've always said this about Sammy. He's been lying, to change history, and other guys that are still around. There's not many now that are his age or a little bit older. They're all passing. The ones that are alive, like Patsy Conti, who's well in his 90s, Gene Gotti's, late 70s, John Koenig, late 70s. These type of guys ain't going to say nothing. They're not going to say nothing. You know what I'm saying? Vic Amuso, he's not going to talk. Whoever else is alive that's back then, old school guys like that, right? They're not going to say anything. So whatever this little goblin decides to say, it's basically like, if people are going to really believe it, that ain't really never been in the life or been on the streets or been involved with anything. People live in Wyoming, Montana, overseas, that don't know nothing about that type of stuff. Yeah, they're going to eat it up and believe it, right? But people know, they know. Just like when Pat Bet David asked John Jr. about, did you just hear this? It just came out like a week or two ago about a guy that says that OJ hired the Gambinos to kill his wife. And John said, that's absurd, right? Which, come on, that is absurd. They're not going to go to California. I don't think there's enough money that OJ could have gave him, which I don't think he had money like that. Yes, he had a nice home. Yes, he had possessions. Yes, but I don't think they wouldn't have done it, right? And he says it right there, right? He says anybody that really knows about the streets or been through the streets are gonna find that, he didn't say comical. He might have said, I think the word he said was laugh, like basically like a humor. You get humor out of it, right? So same thing with Sammy, man. Some of the stuff he comes with is just nonsense. Again, I've said this before, bragging about how the AB said he could get this tattoo when everybody in that unit he was with was not in good standings with their people. You know what I'm saying? Like anybody that was there, because I seen some guys come on like Stack's channel and they said they were there, and those dudes would be looked at as garbage too. You can't be. It doesn't matter if you're with a gang or not. If you're with, you wouldn't be welcome there, right? You wouldn't be welcome in any joint that you went to after being around guys like Sammy the Bull, Cornfed, Joe Messino, those type of guys, right? He has a big admiration for his dad, right? He's really he said there's only two guys that impressed him ever in the world, Nelson Mandela and his dad. Of course, he's a little biased as his dad, but hey, a lot of people thought that way of John Gotti. You hear, some of these dudes spoke up when they should have been probably not saying anything, such as Joe Butter, Jackie Nose, Frank Lacasio. These guys all praised John Gotti, right? Plus the neighborhood loved him, right? That's their, that's different folks, different, whatever floats your boat, however you say that, different folks, different, what is it? Different, just whatever you dig, right? He seemed like a cool dude as far as, he was with it. He was gangster, right? He was brutally honest about his pops and his position on Junior. and what he would have said about Junior sitting down with the feds in 2005, he said my dad would have disowned me just for saying hello, right? Which we've heard people bring this up in their videos. What would his father have said? What would his father have thought? We know what he thought, and he admitted it right there, right? The thing is, though, with John Jr. is that the circumstances changed. The situation changed. It was, fast forward 20 years in the future now, from the time that 85 to 2005, for example. His dad was already gone for 3 years. He sat down with him. He wanted to be shelved. He wanted to be shelved, and he wanted to fight this case as a civilian, right? So it makes sense what he's saying. I'll get to that. He brought up, though, he didn't have a 5K1 letter, right? All those guys you're talking about, they got 5K1 letters, 51K letters. Those letters from the assistant, or excuse me, from the United States ADA, right? From the government, basically saying, "Oh, he helped us," and blah blah blah, and hopefully the judge, is real discreet on his punishment, right? John Gotti Jr. didn't have one of those, right? All those other guys, Mikey Scars, Sakali, John Panisi, Calandra, Howie Santos, who all these other guys. I can't think of everybody right now. Gene Barillo, right? All these guys, John A. Light, they all had 51K letters, all of them. Junior didn't have one, right? Fighting 5 trials within 37 months. Let me read that again. 5 federal trials in 37 months, right? After just doing 7 years, thinking he's getting out in a couple of weeks, then he gets indicted and indicted and indicted and indicted and indicted. I remember I was in prison and seeing him on TV about being indicted and all that. Okay, and then we heard Angel on her channel say that how he was being busted, diesel fuel, diesel therapy, being, brought here, there, and everywhere because they were punishing him, and he had some type of liver infection or some type of kidney infection, and then his shirt was full of blood, and he was losing a lot of weight, and they did that to him, right? Which is way believable because look what they did to his dad, right? And so his reason for the meeting with the feds. And he brought his 2 attorneys, and he dictated, orchestrated the whole thing, right? According to him, right? Which, by what he says and shows, makes sense, right? It does seem that way. So he brought his 2 attorneys, and let's make something clear too. And I've said this before. Guy like Jeffrey Litcham, guys like Gerald Shargell, Bruce Cutler, these type of attorneys, Charles Carnesi, these guys don't represent turncoats. They will not represent turncoats because this is their bread and butter when it comes to defending people. They're not going to say, okay, I'll defend John Gotti Jr. because of his name, and yet all this other business that I could be getting, I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the gutter for John Gotti Jr. They don't do that. They don't do that. And this is something I said before. So it kind of like, but I was also very, I was talking about, let me finish. Okay, so he brought up guys, he was using guys who had already passed away, as well as using the investigator's name, which I believe his name was Jack Riley, from an earlier investigation, either 87 or 89, that he used their name. The funny part is that nobody from the government was like checking this stuff out. Nobody looked into it. I guess he brought up one guy's name and said that I guess a dozen people got stabbed that night. He got stabbed once or twice. He mentioned somebody that got stabbed. They went and checked him out, made him remove his clothing. He had no stab wounds. He brought up a name, Donna, a girl that was not even there. So yeah, we knew what he was doing. He was trying to throw them off. My question is this though. Also in the because there's only like 4 or 5 papers, 4 to 5 different sheets in the 302s of Junior Gotti. He mentions a councilman or somebody that's in the city government of New York. I don't know which borough. Or it might be on the state level. I'm not sure. Or it might even be in the federal level. But he brings up somebody and that they're doing some type of things, right? And so that part they didn't get to ask him, or he didn't even get to that part. So was that a fake name too? Was that a used name? Was all that fabricated too? That's the issue I had with it, because a lot of the other guys he mentioned, like Angelo Rosero, these guys were dead already. A lot of these guys were already dead. You know what I mean? But I did say this before, and I'll say it again. This is the reason why you don't sit down with them, because they can dictate, not dictate, but they can, what's the word I'm looking for? They can, because you're talking to them, because he says he asked for them to have a recorder. They said no. He said the only time it's ever been done I think he said it was Boston or Jersey. I think he said, and that district attorney or that USADA brought a recorder in, and that he ended up getting fired for doing that. So I always said this. This is the reason you don't sit down with them, because you never know how whatever you're telling them, how that agent's going to interpret it, what you're saying, and how they write down whatever you're saying. You know what I'm saying? There's no telling that you go in there and say something like totally opposite than what they write down, right? And that's the danger of it, and that's why one of the reasons you don't do it, right? But anyways, if he was really going to be telling like that, just think about it. Those attorneys, Jeffrey Lyncham, he wouldn't have stood there. I mean, even John even says it. He's like, hey, if you're going to flip, let us know so we can get out of this, right? He spoke about the step-down program at Marion. At the time, Marion was a supermax in the United States in the BOP. Now you got ADX in Colorado. The step-down program, he spoke about it. Now, I've heard about the step-down program even to this day. He said you start off by signing some type of chrono. We call it chronos here in California. Prison system, the federal system is called something else, but it's the same concept. Meaning that you now are not the guy that you was once, right? But because Gotti refused to sign that chrono, he was stuck in Marion, Supermax for his whole time, right? And he made a point too that Marion was the end of the road, basically. So if you continue to, act up in Sandy, what do you call Beaumont, Sandy, what is it called? Sandy, Sandy, I forgot the name of it. Any of those places, Atlanta, USP, Leavenworth, all those different places. If you kept screwing up, the end of the road was Marion, Illinois, right? USP. But John Gotti went straight from court straight to Marion, right? So he got done dirty just from the gate, right? And he never tapped out. He never said, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'll change my ways." Nope. To his dying day, he stood stubborn, and he did it his way. Let's see. After a radical surgery to his dad, I think that's how he described it, radical. He removed some tumors from his neck, as well as part of his jaw and tongue. That's when he met when he had to sit down with him on the 99. He wasn't the same, He said only from here up. He said how hard up the FBI, feds, the government wanted all the Gottis, all of them taken off the streets, right? And he said it's like a Gotti's war, and that all the Gotti's been to court, been to trials, and he was the most tried Gotti. Rich, I mean, if you think about it, he said he fought a case in '87, he fought one in '89, and then he took a plea on a federal case. He was in Raybrook, and then 5 trials after that. So he didn't want to, in his mind, in his eyes, his mind, the way he was looking at things, he didn't want to become the new Teflon Don. He said it will never stop. And his dad was saying, no, it'll stop. You beat him. You got him beat. You showed all the misconduct. You got him beat already. Keep going. And he didn't see it that way. He looked at it like, and because he also knew his dad was dying, he said, which makes sense to me. He was like, if you were, and he's explaining it now. He's like, if you're still good, you're not sick, I'm going to stay with you. But you're going, and I have to take his place. That's how he felt, and that's how it seemed. It seemed like, he was the figurehead, not only the figurehead, but he was actually the man of the family now. You see, he spoke all about the misconduct. Okay, first of all, before I get there. Okay, so we know that, well, you know what, I'll explain more when I get to the certain part. Okay, so he spoke about all the misconduct from special agents, U.S. ADAs, and cooperators down from were doing in order to take Junior down for life, if not giving him the death penalty, which his last case was a death penalty case. Just all the tactics the government used against Gotti Jr. Subpoenaed his sister, brother, other of his witnesses, sent an informant wired up into the hospital to speak to his mother, Victoria Sr., to hopefully get her to open up and speak about John in a criminality type of way, just as she's recovering from having some type of surgery, head surgery, brain surgery, something like that. That was real chicken shit. And I don't know who that was, and I think it was the guy, Louis Casimir. I think it was him. right? They also wired up his visits with his lawyers, attorney visits, which is straight up unethical and illegal as hell, right? But they're willing to do all this stuff in order to get this guy out the way, right? Because he was a Gotti. He shared the same name as his dad, right? Uh, Junior admitted that he was a civilian now. His pops shelved him for life. He spoke about Vinny Basciano following suit, right? With the way Gotti Jr. decided how he was going to fight his case. According to government witnesses such as Dom Sakali, right? I've heard Dom say this. And they wanted Dom to get on the stand and testify. And Dom was like, I don't want to do that because I'll be labeled a rat. Uh, and he also spoke about how he sent word to Joe Massino. Joe Massino had reservations and was like, I love you, kid, but if you do that, you're going to be looked at as a rat. Uh, they asked Arnold Squarteri and Alphonse Siska, who were members of the Gambinos. They both said, don't do it. They asked Joe Arcuri, another high-ranking member of the Gambino, old school. He said he was on board with it. It was okay with him. And the first one was obviously Basciano was with them, right? Who was the supposed acting boss of the Bananos. Also, Sonny Francis, the father, Michael's father, was caught on a wiretap talking to his driver, who was wired up. I think his name was Guy Furtado. And he okayed Junior being killed because they didn't like how he was fighting this case and how he left the life. But his own son, Michael, left the life, right? But I guess he had a meeting with some folks out of Queens who disliked how John Jr. was doing it, handling it. They were not happy with that. But at the same time, it was, at the same time, it was known that, at the same time, Sonny acknowledged that John Gotti, the family, the Gotti alone, the name Gotti, had a lot of people that were loyal to them, and that if this was to, that it could get ugly with people stepping in on John Jr.'s behalf, taking care of business like that, on his behalf. So somewhat of a war, right? Michael Francis said that he got in contact with John Jr.'s lawyer, Charles Canisi, and told him that he would come and show up for them if need be, on behalf of John Jr., that yes, you can walk away from a life, but if anybody come after you because of that could be possible, right? Jr. was adamant about defending himself, and he was very adamant about defending himself, and he brought all the receipts of everything he spent while he fought those 5 federal charges, right? Which was about $10 million, $10 million. He lost all his businesses. I guess they wrecked, put all kinds of bad things out in the paper for that. His home was in foreclosure before he fought these cases. His home was paid for, and he had a building, a nice building that was worth some money paid for. But after everything, towards the last trial, he had to refinance the house, and now it was under foreclosure. And the building was sold. He said he had to get rid of 90 acres of property, and the Poconos in Pennsylvania, and also 50 acres upstate New York that he had to sell in order to pay the lawyers. Also, he mentioned the Allen charge. He said there was 2 announced and 1 unannounced. Basically, that means is the judge is directing the jury to go back into deliberation, back into the room, and to further deliberate. And which is, I didn't know this, but that's very unethical to do it over and over again. He said, especially after they were in deliberations already for over 23 days. You're talking about almost a month that they're trying to figure this out, and they can't go one way or the other. The thing is, I will say this, and like I said, John admitted to all this, was that his dad would not have dug the way he decided to fight this case. He said just for saying hello to those agents, he would have shelled them for life, or he would have disowned them for life. So definitely sitting down with him, he definitely wouldn't like it. Also, on top of that, his dad wouldn't like the fact of him bringing Mikey Scar's ex-wife into it. Also, Mikey Jr. into it to testify. Who Mikey Jr. is a friend of mine. I speak to him quite often. He's a very intelligent man, a good father. good son. He's helped me out a little bit here and there, uh, with advice, different things. You know what I'm saying? We've done a couple of videos together, uh, and I'm looking forward to doing another couple of videos with the boxing sometime soon here. But John Gotti's dad would not have signed off on any of that, because in John Gotti's mind, the way he looked at things was anything, even to help your own self, your own defense team, was in his mind uh, somewhat of, I don't want to say telling, but it was somewhat of that. You know what I'm saying? It was just like, it's basically like you got me, you don't got me. Get whatever you got on me, use it. That's it. You know what I'm saying? That's how I took, how he's been explained and what he said in the past. You know what I'm saying? Uh, but the fact is that spending $10 million on your defense, losing a bunch of businesses, right? And me personally, I believe, because they asked him how did he make his money after he got out and got all the cases behind him. He said, "Well, I wrote a book by myself," which that kept him with a lot more money than having to go through publishers and all that. He sold the rights to the movie, which he got some money from that, and that helped him get his house out of foreclosure. He's still living in the same house, right? Um, I believe personally that John Gotti Jr. was still living off money that he had from back then. That's what I believe, because he was, unlike his dad, who didn't save money at all. This guy was saving money, and he was thinking about the future of his kids and family. Where they would be somewhat more secure while he's locked up. Than to be penny pinching on welfare or whatever. What I'm saying? How some of these old school gangsters families had to do it back in the day when they're locked up, right? Which he did. He went through that as a kid. Uh, I will say this: he's a lot better dad and family man than his dad was, and by far shows, because he all this time he's thinking about his kids, which is his dad's grandkids, and the future for them. You know what I'm saying? And he admits it. He says it. He goes, "I'm not the gangster that he was. I'm not the tough guy that he was." Right? And how many people will admit that? A lot of people won't admit that. You know what I'm saying? But I will say this: the Gotti family have been persecuted big time. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, well, they didn't do nothing. They brought things on, right?" Okay. And when I say they, I'm speaking of the males, not the mothers, not the sisters. I'm talking about, Peter Gotti, Gene Gotti, Vincent Gotti, Richard Gotti, Vincent Gotti the son, John Gotti Jr., right? John Gotti that's locked up right now. All these the other grandson, I think he's fighting a case too now. One of the growing up Gotti kids, I think. Uh, they're involved in things, but it was like they wanted to throw the book at him on everything. Look at Gene Gotti here. He beats 2 cases as far as what do you call it? Uh, hung juries, and then he gets, because of his brother's rules, they couldn't take a deal, so he lost in trial and got 50 years. He did 30 almost on the 50. He did 29 years and some change on the 50. So, he could have been in place way better as a way better figure and authority than his brother Peter or anybody else for that matter. If that was able to happen, but it wasn't. Unfortunately for Gene, he went to prison, did 30 years. Peter Gotti dies in prison, right? They didn't open their mouth and say nothing. John Sr., obviously, he was in so much pain, he wouldn't even take a pain pill, right? He would not break it down and say uncle, so that he wasn't in such a dire position, a sucky position of, as just laying there rotting in your own, sickness from the disease. You know what I'm saying? He ended up choking on his own blood and vomit. He had no muscles in his throat to do anything, so he just choked to death from the cancer. So you got, like that's what he was saying about Sammy Bull. He got no right to be talking shit, right? He ain't got no right to be talking shit about his dad. And Sammy's story is crock of shit, anyways. You know what I'm saying? Oh, he was gonna throw me on the bus, and he said the boss got to be out there, and you got to do the time, just the way it is, Sam. Come on, man. The tapes were never gonna let John Gotti get out of jail. Come on, dude. I mean, anybody that believes that is ridiculous. They don't know the system, how it runs, how it works, anything. He was admitting why people were dying, even though he did say, well, Sammy was getting greedy and killing his own friends. He was the one that was sanctioning it. He says it on the tape. So, it's just part of that's just somewhat of the BS that Sammy tries to run, right? Uh, you know, and so there it is there with John Gotti Jr. and his interaction with Patrick Bet David. a little bit of what I thought about what he said. Like I said, I would like to hear him speak more about Mikey Scars. I would like to hear him speak more about his 302s as far as like the councilman and the other names that he brought up. He only really spoke about the first page, the first paragraph, kind of. But it gave me a better insight, a way better insight and understanding of what was going on with him, right? And again, I'll say this and I'll keep saying this. This is the reason why you don't sit down with the feds for anything if you're not a cooperator, because they can always turn around and try to flip it on you, which they did on John Gotti Jr., right? And try to say that, you know, he wanted to rat and this and that. I don't see where he wanted to rat. It's just that his the way he went about doing it didn't benefit him in the long run. But this was another point he said before I go. He said, "Did Sammy go up to my dad and all these other guys and say, 'Hey guys, give me the good luck. Tomorrow I'm going to cooperate,' right?" We know that didn't happen. That wouldn't happen. He waited for his right time, and I believe that he was contemplating doing it. You know, locking it up and telling while he was in MDC or MCC, wherever he was at back in 1990 when they got arrested. 1991 when he flipped. He was just waiting for the right time, and then he made his move in November of 1991. But no, of course he didn't go up to Frankie Loke and John Gotti and whatever guys that were there from the five families and said, "Hey, this is what my plans are, and this is what I'm going to do, guys." Of course he didn't do that, right? But John Gotti did tell all these people, and like I said, Dom Cicali admitted it too, right, on his channel. So he let people know, and he said he gave the respect to let Joe Massino and these other elder statesmen know what he was going to do. You know, so it's a way different situation. It's just that in some people's eyes and minds that don't fly. You know what I'm saying? And it just is what it is. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and shut this down. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, and if I need to go in more depth on certain things or anything, I'll do that. Big Lou tapping out.